Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. There's a number of faces here that I recognize, and I will mention some of the local authorities that we have worked with. So maybe those of you that we have worked with, maybe you can add in and your own experience as well. What I would like to do is introduce the work of Planning Aid for Scotland, and as it's now called PAS, P-A-S, just PAS. And the work has moved on over the last number of years to encompass what we call building active citizenship. And the reason being is that I think, coming from very much from the spatial planning agenda, what it actually does and mean is that people need to be active in place. That means that requires an understanding, a knowledge how it works, an understanding of how the place functions, a knowledge of how decisions are being made, how to engage with the elected members, but very importantly, understanding the language of spatial planning, which very often still can be seen as quite exclusive. So we've tried, as a third sector organisation, trying to promote a better understanding. Currently we have 420 volunteers working with PAS, and most of whom are planning professionals. There are some architects, we let everyone in. There's also urban designers and some artists. But we really are moving on in this day and age in Scotland into a very exciting period, I think. With Community Empowerment Act just finished, with now the land reform just happening. We know that the planning review is just about to conclude. All in all, it actually spells out a very exciting period. I think over the next 5 to 10 years' time, I'm quite sure we will see a very different community and a much more engaged community. Having said all that, I want to preface that whatever we do also, for us in PAS, it's very, very important that we don't forget the very excluded communities. We have a term for it called seldom heard. And I will want to talk about that at the end a little bit, because I'm sure that some of you working directly in community planning are very much exercised by that as well. So, I've been asked to explain a little bit what charretteplus does. So it's collaborative placemaking. Again, it's nice to see that Harry Burns features in both of our presentation. I didn't know that. He's a real inspiration, and I think his legacy in terms of bringing together the kind of taking down the silos and actually saying, you know, if you want to live a good life, a healthy life, well-being matters. The place that is creating a well-being, it has to be a place that works well, and we heard all about that place standard. So I found him extremely, extremely inspirational. Very quickly, we are an independent charity that's PAS, we're impartial. We are operating on social enterprise principles, and we're obviously in the long-term interest of the public good. We are and continue to be a volunteer-led organisation. It's very important that we don't underestimate the goodwill that volunteers bring about in terms of building social capital, but also when you have volunteers going into localities, into district, into the communities, it is very important for the relationship that then is felt by the people, knowing that it is volunteers that are giving their time and also their knowledge free to the people. Again, we are supporting the public sector. We work across all 32 local authorities, including the 2 national parks. And the ethos is very much about asset-based approaches, so we're trying to help very much community development trusts in terms of taking on assets. We are working in partnership with communities as well as local authorities and any other partner public sector, and we're into co-production. So that's very quickly a run through who we are. In terms of the charrette, some of you will have heard of the typical charrette model, I hope. No? Yes? Okay. Some of you. So it's the charrette model is something that we have now been seeing in Scotland, I think, for the last 5 years or so. It's been around for some time. It's a very intensive, design-led, iterative engagement process. What we felt, working with communities up and down in Scotland, we felt there was a mismatch between the land use, the spatial planning, and that's where charrette came from, master planning, urban design, and actually community planning. And we felt we wanted to make sure that we can add value when we go out and do the charrette. So what we felt, the added value is on the right-hand side. We will always seek to work with the community planning partnership at the highest level to really get a buy-in from the chief executive, from the community partners, planning partners. And that's really so that the resources that are required to make something happen are being identified at the earliest opportunity, or at least the principle of putting resources in. We also want to keep it fairly simple, because if everything is a priority, then you actually it equates to zero. It means it's meaningless. Again, we want to have a very compact document, a very compact action plan, like to set a new norm, and again, it's got to be non-dependent. You don't just have to depend on the professional. The communities themselves are able to lead on lots and lots of outcomes, and I think their confidence needs to be engaged in, and their ability to do more. And again, also, it shouldn't be just time limited. I think if it's a process that's ongoing, we come back and back again to it. So that's the charretteplus. Again, linking spatial planning with community planning means community empowerment in the truest sense. And we very much feel at this moment in time where we have locality plans and you prepare a local development plan, adding it together, bringing it together through the charretteplus, as we're doing in some areas now, I think we'll talk a bit more in detail, can actually lead to a much stronger and a much better sort of journey for the communities. Just some examples of charrettes that we have worked in. In 2013, we did the first charretteplus in Lievenmaus in Fife. 2014 and 15, we worked in Stirling and Motherwell. We're currently in 4 further areas: Cooper in Fife, Lawrencekirk, Aberdeenshire, Falthouse in West Lothian, and very interestingly, Garnock Valley in North Ayrshire is actually linking the locality plans of the area together with the spatial plan. So that's a very exciting opportunity. I should say Dunfermline and Lawrencekirk are actually community-led, whereas the others are coming from the local authorities. But again, we're seeing more of an appetite. There's a number of communities now asking for a charretteplus. We're working with the local authorities. Again, it's this partnership approach that we are trying to approach our work in. Okay, as I said, the plus is about linking spatial and community planning. It's about seeking collaboration with local authorities. It's using the network of professional volunteers and associates to deliver far more and in greater numbers. And by doing so, we are actually also training staff in the local authorities on the job as we're doing it. Taking forward the charrette outcomes is very, very important, because I think any of you who knows engaging with communities, there are 2 pitfalls. One is you raise expectations, and the second one is for a long time nothing is happening, and that can then really limit the kind of curiosity or willingness to engage again. So we need to have a very much a committed action plan that is actually timed as well. Because the community will understand, people will understand that something may take 3 to 5 years, and other things can be quick wins. So again, that needs to be identified. And of course, also to hopefully not only create momentum, but to generate a legacy. So I want to talk to you about a few that we have completed now, because then we can actually see what happened 2 years later. What is the legacy of those? So in Lievenmaus, the outcomes of Lievenmaus were very, very interesting. First of all, the outcome was very much akin to an investment document, a credible plan for improvement and support from the community, councillors and across the council services. We made clear right from the start it had to have the buy-in of the whole community planning partnership team. Community planning manager there, one of your colleagues, David Patterson, was incredibly proactive, and also very much skilled at getting the elected members' support. So much so that at the end of this charretteplus, the elected members voted an award to Lievenmaus, which hadn't featured before in the investment programme, 1 million capital funding plan. However, there were some unintended consequences, which is something that's quite interesting when you work in something relatively new. You don't really know what's happening. We hoped this would happen. It led to new sort of discussions. It led to better relationships between community groups and the officers, and also local groups putting forward more positive suggestions and actually taking on things themselves rather than waiting for the council to act. And I think that's the whole relationship, the whole change in the relationship that we want to see, is about more proactive engagement. And the community can be anything. It doesn't have to be just a community council or a community development trust. There are lots and lots of communities out there. They're not necessarily grouped in such a way, but it's to get to those as well. That's very, very important. Then the Dunblane one, as I mentioned, that was very much led by the Development Trust in collaboration with the Community Council. Again, Stirling Council behind the scene, quite proactively, community planning partnerships there, to a lesser degree, but nevertheless they were there. The outcomes, again, a community-led action plan, the creation of a new community body to take forward the implementation and further development of the action plan, and the active participation of all the schools before, during, and I should say we're still in Dunblane now. We're still working with the local secondary schools because of the active citizenship agenda and because of the young people of Dunblane wanting to create something that is helpful for their life after school. And the most recent one was the Motherwell charrette. And Motherwell was very, very challenging because here the Scottish Government actually asked us to test the town centre first principles, which was quite challenging, but what was very, very positive about Motherwell was the buy-in right from the start at the highest strategic level. Both the chief executive and the leader of the council and the community planning team were behind, and I think that smoothed the process hugely, and it really led to something very, very fast, very quick. And here are some of the outcomes. Since we finished the process, they're now working on a Motherwell Fair Day, local groups and the business together. The proposed local development plan programme for 2016-17 includes funding for the improvement of green space by the health centre and funding for Motherwell Community Forum for an artwork project. That was led by the community. They wanted to see a more emphasis on art. Tidying works, it's often very important, obviously, in localities. Enhancing the appearance of Granton Parade South and Granton Street. Actually, that's quite important. I've brought some of the physical outputs that the architects and designer put together. They're on a table outside, and it actually features some of the tidy and enhancement appearance work. It doesn't always have to be huge amounts of money to be spent on something just to make it look tidier and nicer. And also there now has been an option appraisal for the City Deal project as part of that. Environmental health officers are working now with roads and transportation colleagues and with us trying to develop proposals around the active travel and reducing emission. Again, working across the various departments and local authorities does mean you get everybody around the table listening to the community's expectations or their worries. And again, the vacancy rate in the town centre is now relatively low, with more business opening than closing for the first time for many years. And here are some of the additional sort of, opportunities. Okay. I said I would like to spend a little bit of time to talk about what, in addition to linking community planning and spatial planning, what in addition as an organisation we are keen to do. And that is to work with young people. We have 3 education programmes which we all employ, depending on which area we're going to. So if there's an area which has a secondary school, then we will use our Young Placemaker programme. If it is a primary school that is predominant in that area, we will use the IMBI programme, In My Backyard, looking and helping young people to understand their role in place. Imagine, we heard earlier on about the place standard, and one of it was walkability, cyclability, and if you feel safe. If you ask a child at the age of 6, it will give you a very different answer to an adult at the age of 60 or 40. So we need to make sure that when we plan and think about locality and about place, we talk about everybody in that who lives there. And I think youth engagement is really vital in that. We also talk about working with seldom heard communities. Now you'd be surprised, obviously one of the seldom heard communities that we're working with are the Gypsy Travellers communities in Scotland, who have a particular challenge at this moment in time. Community Gypsy Travellers have their sites allocated through the development plan, but as many of you know, there is a reluctance by many communities to actually have a site nearby. So what you then find is the sites are further and further away from amenities, from services, and young people have to travel, if they're going to school, quite wide range and wide travel, so miles. That's the word I'm looking for. But equally, what's also important is if you're a mother, for example, of a Gypsy traveller community, you suffer a disproportionate amount of mental health issues, partly because of the induced stress situation that you face again and again. So I think, again, thinking back to Harry Burns, we had that discussion with him, we need to make sure that our places are fit for everybody. So we need to have a much wider and a more inclusive system. Again, the interesting thing of all our work so far around charretteplus has led to community-led initiatives. So no longer just waiting for the local authorities to produce, but actually in proper form of co-production for communities to come forward with their own ideas, with their own wishes, their own aspirations. I think that's very much in the sort of Christie spirit. Here we have some of the youth engagement. The IMBI in my backyard, as I mentioned, the little alien coming down, looking at and asking questions, reacting as an animator. The youth engagement program, which is for secondary schools, and a young placemaker, which is a program for 16 plus. And I should say, the young placemaker now that we have in Scotland have now started to have European exchanges with counterparts in Poland and in Latvia, Norway, and Sweden. What's really interesting about that, again, if you look at a young person living in the north of Sweden and a young person living in Falkirk, there are very much similarities, but there are also differences, and it's good to know about these things. So the Young Placemaker program is quite an eye-opener for young people. And again, we also work with Place Work Folk in the Heritage Lottery-funded program to look at heritage as well. Very quickly, the Young Gypsy Traveller work that we've done over 18 months period. There is a guide freely available for local authorities if you were interested in downloading that. And it was launched by the Minister last year. And it's very much trying to help local authorities across, not just your housing colleagues or your spatial planning colleagues, but everybody really to understand what we can do to enrich the lives of gypsy traveller communities. Again, for those in more rural communities, the charretteplus is also can also be adopted for communities in rural areas. So, for example, in the Isle of Rum has an aspiration to grow from their 35 population that they are now to once what they were about 400. So they have a very, very dynamic community there, very diverse. Even though it's only 34, but that means 34 different opinions on how best to grow the community. They produced a community-led plan, and that was adopted by Highland Council as a statutory supplementary guidance. So again, they're now in the process of actually drawing money to get their ideas going. I think that's about it. Thank you very much.